Yesterday, Lai Mohammed, Nigeria's Minister of Information and Culture, listed 100 achievements of the Muhammadu Buhari administration in 2021, concluding that the government gave a good account of itself. Mohammed said that many achievements were attained despite the challenges posed by widespread insecurity in the country and the COVID-19 pandemic. However, the question lingering on the minds of many Nigerians is whether the achievements presented by the minister had any meaningful impact on their lives and livelihoods. Now joining us to assess the administration's scorecard in 2021 and help us to separate fact from fiction is Anthony Kila, a professor of strategy and development and director of the Center for International Advanced and Professional Studies. Good morning, Professor Kila. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So let's start just with your general review of 100 achievements for the year 2021, which obviously ought to have included the Electoral Amendment Act, but alas, we know how that went.
Well, I think it's called achievement because they try to put positive things. They don't put the things that they were unable to do or did not go very well. That's the whole point of the list. Well, my first my first take is that two things came out to me from those from that list. Number one is that it appears that it was written for the opposition, not citizens. It appears to be a list that was written to show that we are doing things, so do not think we're doing things, rather than explaining what has been done, really. So it was more opposition in mind as the target audience than normal citizens. And by opposition, I mean social and political opposition, not just the political side. It's against people, the so-called whalers and the opposing side. Number two is that it appears to be a list that was compiled in this way. They asked ministries to send in their achievement. Then an editor cobbled together everything that was done. I think we should give kudos to the government for trying to give an account of their, I was going to say academic year, of the performance year, of what they've done. The problem is that when you miss the audience, you put text out of context. You need to put text into context, and that is what this has not done. It has shown a lot of effort, it has shown problem, and it has shown what they've done. But the normal Nigerian who's neither feeling like a supporter or an antagonist of the government, who's just looking at things either objectively or selfishly for their personal needs, will be looking at things like inflation, cost of food, employment or unemployment, how well is business doing, and what is the future for their children. This list, which is a lot of effort, does not really address that. So in a way, it is not addressing the real economy and the real life. And some of the things on the item is amusing. My favorite is item 69, where it just said that X number of people graduated from the college and they were posted to places. It's not very good for a country like Nigeria to consider that as an achievement.
418.
There are some missing things there, which is a shame.
You said 418 cadets. That's listed as an achievement.
Yes, yes. That's item 69, yes. I found that very amusing. You know, there are some missing words there. So in the list of 100 things, the word procurement came up 9 times. So we're procuring. The word produce or production came up twice, and is not saying what we're producing. But really what we need to do is we should be producing. And a good list should be saying what we've put in place for production to come up. That again is a missing link there. It is not the fault of government of Nigeria that COVID-19 decided to break in the world. And so that's a challenge. One would have expected the government to mention vaccination. That is a missing thing there, because the major concern we have is, on one side, security and health. On the other side is economy, is employment, is cost of living, and the ability to produce and sustain ourselves. I think the list should have gone that way. It's a lot of explanation of effort, and it's sad. You see, if this list was the first year in government, of a new government. This is a kind of list that should have been a 2016 list. If this list was the first year in government, it would sound like preparatory steps for bigger things to come. But here we are at what? Less than quarter to end of the game for the government. I think as people, there's no point because President Buhari is not going to come and contest again, all things being equal. There's no point antagonizing the president. We just have to show the way and understand that we're in trouble and see, and everybody, regardless of their political affiliation, should just see what contribution they can do to save the day and guide tomorrow.
To save today or to save the day and guide tomorrow. Real quickly, I'd like to know your thoughts on what was said about the economy as achievements. And let's just narrow it down because the economy is not stupid. And the indication is in the lives of the people. But what was said was, low inflation rates, many things have been done as regards to the economy. What's your take on all of that? The caveat is the economy isn't stupid.
Well, since you've gone to the American expression, economy is not stupid. Let's stay in the American way. This is the difference between Main Street and Wall Street. So there's some indexes that works in the boardroom that do not work in the life of people. If you talk about inflation growing or slowing down, what people want to see is and this is not a populist statement, is the cost of bag of rice, is the cost of gari, cost of transportation, and was their Christmas better this year than last year? How much does it cost? How easy is it to get into hospital? How easy is it to get connected? There's a lot of effort here, but it's not relating to that. One would have hoped for, and this is really hope as a citizen, one will have hoped for a statement that says that we have increased employment by so amount because of what we've done. We've vaccinated X amount of people. We have increased the production of rice and gari by X ton because of what we've done. Personally, I would want it to be thanks to private organization, not direct government intervention. When we started the intervention, Tunde noticed that they didn't mention the electoral bill, which the whole world was waiting for as a fundamental thing. That's because it's not something to be proud of. I noticed that they did not list the banning of Twitter as an achievement either.
Okay, you didn't go there.
Even though they do seem to be quite proud of that for some reason or the other. Now, let's talk about item 76 and the Muhammadu Buhari administration's pride in maintaining a budget cycle January to December during the second tenure of the president. What is your take on that and its significance to the economy?
I think it sounds like the scorecard of the class of special needs. The standard is so low that the kind of thing we are trying to celebrate, is quite embarrassing. And again, you see, I do not blame the government. It just shows where we are as a people, where we are as a country. That things are so bad that we need to celebrate the ability to maintain a budget cycle. It's worrisome. Let's just put it that way. There are some students for whom achievement is that they came to class at all, whilst others are going for A star and massive improvement. We celebrate some people for saying they came to class and they stayed to the end. And this is a worrisome thing to observe, that is the state of the country at the moment. Those are the kind of things we're forced to achieve.
He talked about insecurity. He talked about purchase of hardware. He talked about combating terrorism and insurgents. What's your take on the insecurity part of the scorecard?
Again, to your expression, the economy is not stupid. The things like security, you don't talk of effort. You don't talk of, you talk of results, you see, not effort. I understand, and really, we must give appreciation that things have been procured, plans have been laid out, because if there's no plan, if there's no procurement, you definitely won't get result. So the point is there are efforts going on, but the results are not out there. Security is not work in progress. Security is the place is either safe or not safe. An investor, a trade exhibition, a conference will not be held in a place where there's ongoing effort on security. It will be held in a place that is secure. Investors will go to places that they know that they can actually gather, deliberate, plan, buy and sell. Not a place where a lot of efforts are going on. And this is why I go back to say, this speech, this list, sounds like that of a government that had just started work. Unless we agree that, things have been bad so far, but given where we are now, there'll be a quantum leap in the next 2 years or so when the government is out of place. But, the history of the government does not show that. So it's not huge. Security, a lot of efforts there, but very little has been achieved. And very little is very clear. Security is not a bit. It's either all or nothing. It's one of those things in life that is white and black. A neighborhood is either safe or unsafe.
Yes, you don't get
so
space,
a country.
Slightly unsafe. Now, we've made reference to some of the items on this list of 100 that seem to really be scraping the bottom of the barrel. I give you item 62, talking about the number of visas issued as an achievement. But we also have landmark legislation like the PIA. I'd like your comments on that.
Well, I like the idea of the visa being issued. We haven't really seen the effect. You see, this is part of the thing. If we had a system, and this goes beyond the present government, it's the kind of system we run. If we had a system where governmental actions are justified in view of desired results, either in their manifesto before coming to power or for every step they take, it would be easy to measure to say that because we have modernized the way we issue visas, these are now the benefits. That would be a better statement. You state what you've done, then you identify the result achieved from what you've done. That is how it's called a result. For the petroleum bill, I think we all rejoiced when it came out, although there was some controversy. I think it's a good thing. Where we are, we're not seeing the result yet. There's a paragraph, there's a line there that announced the profit of the Petroleum Corporation. I do not think it's linked to the sign of the bill, so that is another thing on itself. I think now that the bill is signed, we're waiting to see the cogent result. Not the process, not the effort, not the initiatives, not the plan, but the clear result for what the government has done. So that's where we are. It goes back again to where we started from. It seems as if we're in a preparatory class. We're not yet achieving what we can achieve, which is okay, for the history of a country. The problem is that for government that has spent so much time, the achievements are light. And it's a problem for the members of the party that are hoping to vie on that platform after the sitting administration leaves. At some point, the president has to leave, and I think some ministers will leave with him. Maybe some will stay if they win. But the problem is that to vie on a platform that has been in power for close to 8 years, 6 years plus, going to 7 now, that has come with a lot of expectation. If you juxtapose that expectation with reality, therein lies the problem. Maybe if the president had campaigned, if the whole party had campaigned the way they're governing now, expectations would have been very low and people will be happy with what they've done. The problem is that the stars were promised and what we're seeing are sand.
What would you say about the Kano-Maradi standard gauge railway line that was listed as achievement that will cost us $1.959 billion in loan that was controversial?
Well, I think what I would say is that it's the kind of governance that is terrible. I think the people in government in this country, one day, I don't know when, have to realize that the Commonwealth is managed on behalf of everybody. And that anything they want to do, they need to, not after they've done it, they need to, before doing it, open it up to scrutiny so that they can justify the reason why they're doing it. This rail project you're talking about, there's a lot of controversy about it. Not because people don't like the Kanu people or because they don't like the Mahdi people. Not because anybody hates anybody, but because of two reasons. One, the direct benefit to the larger Nigeria is not clear. Two, there's a sensation that other parts of Nigeria will have benefited more and this is very important, will have benefited more, but also giving better returns for such investment. So the government is proud of its infrastructures, for example, and you've mentioned one, but I look at the most productive part of the country and there's actually a deficit in the amount of investment being made there. It appears the government is making social intervention rather than capital intervention. The difference between the two is this. If you do capital intervention or capital investment, you get returns. Elementary economics. Capitals yields profit. Anything that is capital related will bring a return. If it's just a social intervention, then you might not expect returns, at least cogent returns that you can count. And I think here that the rest of Nigeria has an opportunity to be divided ideologically at this point, to decide what kind of future do we want for our country. Do we want something that creates wealth or that donates and gives out palliatives to people? This is the kind of question that is coming up as we're nearing close to 25 years of uninterrupted democracy.
And what is your take on agricultural interventions, amongst a few of them? Dams, poultry processing, a communication and administrative block in the Agricultural Research Council, free agricultural inputs to women, physically challenged farmers and smallholder farmers, amongst other things.
I think it's good, but it's not good enough. You say it's a good idea, and this is where the ideological approach comes in. The government is doling out things to people rather than putting in place something that will create wealth. On one side, the approach is, I'm sure, of good intention, because really, no minister goes there to try to damage Nigeria, although there's a joke, saying it appears some people are trying to damage the country. I don't believe that. I think everybody's doing their best. It's just that their best is not good enough. The government is doling out things, is giving out to individuals. This is a country of 200 million people. How many people can the government reach individually? That, besides the fact I don't believe the government should be giving, the government should be enabling. That's on one side. On the other side, the whole essence of agricultural intervention is threefold. Number one is to allow production. Number two, physically, cogently, is to crash the price of food items so that citizens can see that the prices of food items is low and it becomes affordable so that people are well nourished. Then ultimately to gain out of it, to get profit by selling to ourselves and hopefully exporting to the rest of the world. None of these three criteria has been met. In the middle of all these, because it's wealth creation and distribution, then there's creation of jobs. Job that is not just planting the food, but it's processing it, packaging it, transporting it, and transforming it into something else. There needs to be that view, and all the agricultural intervention should be done thinking of that, to think, how do we get more value for what we produce? How do we train people who can turn what we produce to more production, more productivity, and yield more? This conversation is not there. We're running a very complex, large, diverse country as if we're running a small family, and it can't work. We need to up our game. Nigeria needs a quantum leap, and this list, which I repeat, is laudable because the effort is a lot, because the intention is good, is not a good list. This is it's like an essay of a not very good student. Let's put it that way.
Okay. In this list, part of the achievements as regards infrastructure, I was hoping to see what I would call one of the most integral projects of the Buhari administration. But I didn't see it there, which is supposed to be the Siemens deal that was supposed to solve the problem of power supply in our country. Any clues as to what might have happened?
Well, you didn't see it because it's not real yet.
Oh.
Because it's still on the intention table. It has not happened. And that's a problem. The kind of things you will see
but just hear the story,
things
sir.
that are happening.
Just hear the story, sir.
Yes.
They said in July 2020, President Muhammadu Buhari approved the payment of 15 million euros and 1.708 billion as counterpart funding for the PPI. But what is happening? Did you hear that, sir?
No, please say that again, yes.
It was said that in July 2020, President Muhammadu Buhari approved 15 million euros and 1.708 billion as counterpart funding for the PPI.
Yes.
Because a lot of people have said this will have been the game changer, because the problem, a lot of people ascribe to the economic decadence in this country because we don't have power supply. So why is that project, the Siemens deal, not on the table?
Well, so two things. Number one, you're very right, like all those who say that should have been a game changer, because a lot of our problems comes from power supplies. It's not on the table because it has not happened yet. And this tells you, that we need to rethink the way we do things. We need to think in terms of serving citizens. If we think that way, we would know that life is now digital rather than analog. When things are announced, there should be a rush, a fierce urgency of now to achieve things, so that knowing fully well that a list will be made by the end of the year, there should be requests for a deadline of when things should be done. They cannot put the deal because it is still work in progress, like a lot of things. I think part of the problem we have here is that we're dealing with a digital age with an analog mindset, an analog process, and it's affecting the profile of governance and image of government. That deal you mentioned is an example of that. As a citizen, we can only hope that, sooner or later it will come to fruition. We don't hope the government to fail. We actually hope the government succeed, because if the government succeed in the real sense, it's our benefit. So we cannot hope or wish them well. We just wait for that to happen. It is not on the list, to your question, because it is not an achievement yet.
Right. Two things. The president's New Year address is almost upon us, but it reminded me of this year's New Year's address, 2021, where he said that he would be creating vast opportunities in fintech, agriculture, business process startups in the entertainment industry. How would you say that the Muhammadu Buhari administration has fared on their New Year's resolution? And he also mentioned in that speech his C agendas, SEA, security, the economy, and anti-corruption. And anti-corruption is barely mentioned in this list of 100 achievements. The Ministry of Interior's Enforcement Investigation and Inspection Unit was about all that got a look in. So what's your take on that New Year's address and how those resolutions have manifested?
Thank you very much for reminding me of this. The anti-corruption thing, which is one of the signatures of this government, is not mentioned in the list of achievement. And that's a shame. That's the big indictment. Of all things, I think that is the biggest indictment of this government, because they really went to power, and some of us supported them seriously on that, went to power raising the credential of wanting to fight corruption. Now, it hasn't been done. Just whilst we're at it, let us appeal to government that when we want to talk about the fight for corruption, what needs to be done is not just to say people are being arrested, but the people are being arrested, tried, and above all, what they've looted returned to the coffers of the Commonwealth. And whilst we're at it, all the investigating and operational forces, EFCC, the police, DSS, they need to learn to respect the law and to avoid unnecessary drama. There's too many people in this country that is arrested with fanfare and released the next day. What's the whole point of that? It's a waste of money, it's distraction, and quite frankly, it's barbaric. I think the president needs to directly intervene, maybe through the Attorney General of the Federation, and in conjunction with the bench and the bar, needs to look at our mode of dispensing justice, which at the moment is not good at all. To the other things about the infrastructure that you mentioned, correction, I noticed there's an item in which it appears the only thing, cogent thing that was done in a part of this country is a correctional center, I think in Osun State or so, that, you know, that really stands out. The infrastructural development is not balanced. It needs to be called out, and you know, and this is also an indictment to those who are elected, nominated on the card of their region. If they're keeping quiet there, there's something wrong with them. Some people need to be called out on that, about the balance of development and infrastructure. It is unfortunate that we run a system, to go back to where you started from, where people are not held account on the promises they made. Elsewhere, as time passes, people remind you of your manifestation, of your manifesto. They remind you of promises you've made, and they remind you of interventions you've made. Perhaps the media can help us, together with the civil society, to keep reminding people in power of what they said before getting there, or what they promised even whilst there. The statement, the New Year statement, reality does not match expectation and promises here. We have not seen a quantum leap in the digital world. We have not seen a quantum leap in technology. We have not seen, well, the only thing we've seen actually in the digital world is the banning of Twitter. I go to it because I take it very personal. But we've not seen other things outside that. You know, we've not seen a development of the mega Silicon Valley. There's been spotted achievement here and there, but by individuals without government aid. If the government is going to claim achievement for anything, I'm sure the government cannot claim achievement for how the Harmattan season is going. If the government is going to claim achievement for anything, it has to be something that they've directly worked on, either because they've passed law or because they've given some kind of intervention or participation that has generated results. In those areas of entertainment, of technology, no, there's nothing to really write about there.
All right, we'll go for a quick break and we'll come back to you. And I'll still like to ask you more on this speech. We'll be right back after this quick commercial time, and stay with us. All right, welcome back. We still have Anthony Kila, Professor of Strategy and Development and Director of the Center for International Advanced and Professional Studies. Great to have you on the show. So, one other thing that was said in the speech, the minister did say that the federal government recovered from the dire conditions of the economy occasioned by COVID-19 by rolling out effective fiscal and monetary policies, as well as health plan designed to control the spread of pandemic and mitigate its effect on the economy. I mean, when you look at this and you try to juxtapose this with reality on ground, Nigeria has one of the lowest vaccination uptake rates around. You know, we also have a health system that has been suffering. We also have massive unemployment. We also have a lot of job losses occasioned by COVID-19. And you see something like this. What do you say? What's your reaction?
Well, I think it's the same syndrome we're suffering from. The fact that the government actions are not targeted at impressing citizens. They're not oriented, they're not citizen-centered. Because, for example, So the COVID is not government's fault. A good list of achievements will have shown that the COVID has forced us to do ABC, that we have used this challenge that the COVID has thrown at us to achieve 1, 2, 3, 4 items. And there's some things that could be listed, for example, because it could be said that because of COVID, our disease control center has now become center stage. And perhaps we have done action to improve the fight against viral diseases, Lassa fever, all other kind of diseases, cholera, which is really there in the country. We should have used this opportunity of when health became center stage, we should have tapped into that to create a matrix of achievement where one item would lead to other branches of achievement. We should have talked about creating more centers for diagnosis and for testing. But to do these things, you don't just say it, to be able to list these things, you need to have done them. I think the federal government can learn from some states because, in fairness, some states did rather well, relatively well, we should underline, because the pandemic has forced them to look towards the civil society for ideas, time, and indeed financial contribution to help the citizens. So I think the federal government cannot but be scored low on that. And that is why that list is not there. The challenge that COVID gave us could have been turned to the opportunity of improving our healthcare system. And you rightly talk about unemployment. This challenge could have been an avenue to create employment for a lot of people. And a lot in Nigeria, for a country of over 200 million people. When the government, I think, is one of the least, there's a list of less than 100,000 people employed in a certain sector and trained. You see, in a country of over 200 million people, 100,000 is not a figure that the federal government of Nigeria should be proud of to have done anything for. You need to be talking in millions and not 1 or 2 millions. Anything in Nigeria should be millions because it's a big country and because it is being run in a central way. If the country were run in a true federal way, people would be looking to their state or their region for solutions. But because of the way the country is being managed, everybody is looking at the federal government. And that is why this list is important and what is missing there is important as well. So we've not turned that challenge to opportunities, and that is why perhaps we're not talking about vaccination with numbers because we're not in a good place. We're not talking of number of diagnostic centers that have been set up. And we're not talking of how the focus on health has forced us, encouraged us, or at least helped us to improve our health delivery system. But I dare say, because I can imagine some state commissioners disagreeing with me now, I know for a fact that some states have done well, but we're talking about the federal government.
What, in your opinion, is the prognosis for 2022? What kind of low-hanging fruit has been left on the vine that's been underexploited? What can really be done in terms of progress in any area of your choice?
Well, we can start with Rufai Siemens deal, since that has been paid for. Maybe we should follow up on that. I also think there's some things that do not need money to be done. A reorientation of the judicial system can be something that can be done quickly, especially the operative side. You don't need a bill, you don't need a lot of power to call the chairman of the FCC or the chairman of the FCC, the ICPC, the Inspector General of Police themselves, to have a round table and to modernize how they operate. No more dramatic arrest. And perhaps you want to tell prosecutors that what interests the people is to get back looted funds rather than headlines in the newspaper or just humiliating suspects. It's a year of politicking that will start very soon. I have more hope and interest in the people. I think people should now know that they need to think very carefully about their participation or non-participation in the electoral process, and that who they elect matters a lot, and people should start thinking about it beyond the usual way we've been doing it. Actually, it's not beyond. It's totally against the way we've done it so far. I think those who can should start having a very strong rethink on the way we deal with Nigeria, because so far it's not great and there's a danger that it can get worse. The low-hanging fruits we can have beyond the judicial and reforms. I think overall, this is my approach. Given with the way the economy is, and it doesn't look very bright in the future, I think some people who can should get together and make a list of what I call zero-cost reforms. Things that can be done to improve the life of citizens without spending a lot of money. And I think that can be a legacy that the government can leave, at least this time in history can help us to do. A lot of them has to do with a rethink of how we do things. I've given the example of the judicial sector, which can go a long way. And perhaps one of the things we can add to it is that we need to start thinking of generating revenue whilst understanding that it is not by going to tax people that will help us generate revenue, because the economy is not good. We have to be sort of more creative about it. A good thing to do now is to try to find a way to enable investment to thrive where it can thrive, and to enable those who want to create jobs, create wealth, and add value to our life to be able to operate. A low-hanging fruit would be for the government to think of everything that hinders production to be taken away. With all the reform that has been done with the company registration institution, the CAC, ideas say it is not hooray yet. The system is still slow, and those kind of little things is a very low-hanging fruit that can be dealt with in a week. It's about setting targets, setting clear guidelines, and clarifying expectations for people, and then maintaining it and monitoring it, and perhaps sanction those who sabotage.
How does the government generate revenue without taxes? I mean, that's interesting to me. How does it work?
Oh yes, it works by creating wealth. You see, tax is an indirect way of generating revenue. It's the dullest way, where you just go after people to create tax. The first thing to do is to make sure that people can actually generate wealth, not a flat thing. There is, for example, I think in Abuja, just a few days ago, where the equivalent of the governor, the minister of Abuja, just came out to say, if people don't build their houses by a certain time, their CFO will be revoked. You see, those kind of things do not put text in context. We need to understand that people do not refuse, for example, to build houses because they just want to keep an empty land. Maybe some people are speculating. But in most cases, because they don't have money. So the government needs to focus on how can we generate wealth, not just for the government coffers, but for the country generally. And by so doing, you sacrifice certain enforcement and you encourage certain proactive steps to be able to generate wealth. At the moment, the number of people paying taxes are mostly people who are forced to do so. There's a lot of people who cannot even pay because they're not part of the wealth generation process. So we need to make wider the space for those generating wealth, and then we need to make simpler the mode of generating revenue for government, which is mainly tax. And perhaps we need to go and invest in things that will create more wealth almost immediately, if not immediately. We need to develop a kind of allergy, if you want to hear, for imposing things on people, and think that we're at a state where we want people to express themselves, we want them to grow. Because if you, for example, whilst the government needs money, we need to ask ourselves, what does the government want to do with the revenue? Is it to create infrastructures and to create social amenities for people? We can actually, a very radical view, but it's not impossible, we can actually encourage private people to do those things.
But we're doing that already.
Find a way to then generate revenue for themselves. Yes.
I said we're doing that already now. We're doing that already.
Yeah, but it's not enough. Well, it's not enough. We're not getting enough. We need to do more of that. We need to have less of government, more of private intervention in our lives. And we can see the results. If you look around you anywhere in this country, private estates are clean, they're safe, because private people run it. Government-run estates are dirty, dilapidated, and unsafe before the government runs it. So we need to have less of government and more of private.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights, Professor Kila.